everybody, thanks for coming. This is our first Lunch and Learn After Hours event. If you want to be on our mailing list and currently aren't, just reply to the email that you received about the Lunch and Learn, or my email, which is rtober@kbantv.org. This is Ted Reed. This is, I forget what number Lunch and Learn this is, or Lunch and Learn After Hours. Yes, but he is a local independent producer from Beverly, and he has 13 Emmys, and he's taught a lot of classes here, so we're very happy to have him back again and to learn about the green screen. So
thank you. Thank you.
Here's Ted.
Okay. You know, one of the things we like to do with these workshops is get people thinking about what can they do with the facilities here at KPAN TV, because it's, you know, your community TV station. It's here for you to be able to do stuff in. And a lot of times people think about, okay, what can I take the cameras out to go shoot? And a lot of times there are things you can do in the studio here that are just as much fun. So what we wanted to get into today is one of the great pieces of video magic that you can have access to here at KPAN TV Studios, and that is using green screen. Now everybody's probably seen, you know, the television weatherman is standing up there and he's waving around and he's pointing at this, that, and the other thing, and he's really just standing in front of a green painted background. And there's a reason for why it's green. But first, a little history. Back in the old days, if you wanted to have an image appear over another background, the way to do it was to set up a big film screen, have a projector in back shooting whatever the background image was, and then people would stand in front of it. And, you know, for the 1930s, it wasn't too bad a way to do it. King Kong was done that way, either, you know, live action or stop motion, but it was, you know, essentially projecting an image in back of who the people are and then shooting that with a camera, and that's how you did a composite picture. And then Stanley Kubrick, when he did 2001, had access to a new way of doing it, and that was you had a camera that was shooting the scene. The projector, instead of being in back, was right next to the camera, only at a 90-degree angle. And it would bounce off of a mirror onto a very reflective screen. You've probably seen these, like almost a silvery kind of screen. And it would work out that if the focal length of this lens and the focal length of the projector were exactly the same, it would work out. Of course, it would take days to set this kind of thing up, so it wasn't the easiest. So another thing they tried is to be able to use a colored background and being able to separate the background from the foreground image. And the reason video went with green instead of blue. In film, if you're going to do a background like this, you use usually the blue background because film emulsions are more sensitive to the light values in blue, but video cameras are more sensitive to green. So the green signal coming out of a color video camera usually has the most amount of detail in it and the most amount of information in terms of brightness and darkness. So it's really the best color to be able to use as a background if you're going to use video to separate things. Now what we've got here is a live feed from this studio camera here, and we've got one of our favorite places to go, the Taj Mahal. So what I need a volunteer to sit in the chair. You'd like to do it?
I see it too.
No, you get, but we'll have someone take a picture.
You can't be wearing green.
Right. No, you can't. That's one of the things we'll get into. Okay, so if you see, you can't see it.
Want to roll it?
We could, yeah, but if we move around, if you can see enough, yeah. So, you know, what we've got here is, you know, nothing happening in terms, it's just sort of whatever the room light is right now. And if you look at what's happening in the background, the light's coming from sort of over in this direction, and it's sort of a hard projector. So what you do is you try to copy as much as you can the lighting in your background. So we've got that, so it's kind of, it's sort of coming from the same angle as what's hitting the Taj Mahal. And the thing about Chroma Key is the more light you've got, usually the sharper the image is going to be, the more information is getting into the video camera, and therefore the cleaner the Chroma Key is. This is pretty good for a standard definition, Chroma Key. So the other thing you want to be able to consider is, sort of perspective on some of these things. You wouldn't have somebody right in your face like that, so zoom out just a little and stick it like that. So I'll take your place so you can see what this all looks like.
So did you say you intensify this light?
Well, the thing is, the less you have to crank up the signal, the less grain you have. And with the less grain, the more detail you've got in the image. The idea of Chroma Key is to be able to get as much information in the foreground image as possible, and also in the background. The thing about a big, flat, colored space is that you can see all the grain that's going to be introduced in the video. So the more light you've got sitting on the background, the better the key is going to be. In other words, the better you'll be able to do a cutout with green. Now, so all of this is going, basically the signal from this camera is going into the control room here. It's being mixed with the background picture, and then coming out, the two signals are mixed together and then fed out here. Whatever's green disappears. And that's basically it. So by playing around with your camera settings and a bunch of other things, you can kind of approximate what it is you want to do. Now, this works out great in the studio that's set up for it. As you can see, we've got a totally green background here, so you could actually line up a bunch of people against a green background. This green sheet that goes on the bottom here folds up so it doesn't get too dirty. And that's, again, one of the things you got to watch out for. Chroma Key systems for studios are pretty good these days, so you don't have to be really compulsively accurate about how you're going to be using it. But you still have to be able to come in within a certain number of areas and that, so you can get a decent looking picture. Good exposure, good color balance, and make sure you're in focus. So
was that camera focusing on you? So if you walked all the way to the back of the room, you wouldn't have been in focus?
Probably not. Though it's, how am I doing?
You're centered now.
Yeah, I think you look okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that's down. There you go. Yeah, so it's not bad.
Yeah.
You just look like a giant.
So I guess, well, that's the thing, you can have, and the thing is, if you're really set up right, I mean, you can have the background, you can have a layer that's keyed in here, then you can have another layer on top of that, so you could have, somebody, really tiny down in there and somebody huge over here, and just paste them up against the background. And, you'll get kind of interesting results without a lot of tweaking and a lot of playing around. But if you're careful with, matching the lighting, matching color temperature, and all that stuff, experiment with that stuff, and you'll get, some pretty good results. So, yes?
I noticed when you were back there, I saw a lot of noise around your pans.
Yes, that's because it's dark back there. I'm probably about two... No, not now, but when I was back there, I'm about 2 stops brighter here than I was in the back, yeah.
Because the light was a little bit dimmer, that's how it came in.
Exactly, and so when you introduce noise, you start being able to see the green through, all that.
Earlier, before he reset the camera, the shadow of the chair was scintillating.
Buzzing, we call it, yeah.
That's the same thing. You're
Because
just
you
out of
didn't
range.
have the light on there.
You're just going out of range of the cutoff.
So, and again, you imagine the possibilities you've got, because now you can, if somebody's doing like a talk show and they want to be able to be someplace besides in the studio, you could set it up this way. Interviews, things like that could, be a lot more interesting if you can kind of make it look like you're someplace else. The thing to remember is if you go from a 2-shot to a single shot, your background has to change size, which is a difficult thing to switch you know, to have like 2 mixes ready to go in the switcher, I don't know if it's possible, but you basically have to think ahead of that because the background has to match whatever the framing is of your foreground.
Would you say like when you watch like a news thing and they're interviewing people, like one person's in Seattle, one person's in Boston, they've got the bridge, would those be usually green screens?
Sometimes it's, you know, ESPN uses a lot of green screens and a lot of virtual sets. If you go to where their studios are in Stamford, Connecticut, you'll basically walk into a studio that looks like this. It's all green except for like maybe a desk and a couple of chairs. And everything is green screen, and you know, everything is superimposed in back. But they've got 3 or 4 different channels for the green screen. So you've got one shot set up to get everybody at the table, close-up of whoever's here, close-up of whoever's there, maybe a 2-shot or something else. So every time you go, you've got the background and the foreground mixed together. So that's kind of beyond the capabilities of what we're able to do here. But with editing, you know, you could definitely make it work. So that's one way to be able to use green screen to get, you know, a composite picture. This is basically called compositing. When you hear special effects artists talking about compositing a spaceship over a star field background with a planet zipping through the foreground, it's just these layers of stuff that are sitting on a transparent background, so you can just keep stacking them up and just, you know, build all kinds of different layers together. So this is the way you do it in the studio. But that's not the only place you can do green screen. If you go and get yourself a portable green screen, it can either be, you know, another piece of fabric like this that you stick on a background stand, or they have these flexible things that kind of fold up, and then you take them out of the bag and they unfold like this. And it's enough space to have somebody, you know, standing there. What you do is when you get into editing, you crop the sides and the top so you don't see where the edge of this is, and it just turns into a clean foreground picture with a transparent background. And yes, so the thing to remember is not to wear green, but you know, I was using this for a particular thing because if, say you want to have something, you know, sort of pick up and float across the screen or something like that, just dress somebody up in green and key them out, and then now you can, it's like an invisible puppeteer, you know.
Yeah, this is cool.
So
Can I get a green suit now?
B&H Photo in New York sells green suits.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I bet you the Party City does too.
Their bodies are transparent in your compositing. Can't you switch which is foreground and which is?
Not if they're green, because if they're you could key inside them. You could key these guys as silhouettes, you know, yeah, right, with something filling them on the inside, and then put that over another background.
That's cool. That's
so
cool.
You know, you could, and so they become sort of a moving stencil,
so that's a
kind of thing.
Yeah, you turn them into track mats.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how they used to do those Apple iPhone commercials. But the people would just be like one solid color dancing.
And a lot of,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of Star Trek aliens looked like, you know, were developed the same way. You know, just put somebody in a suit that you can, or, you know, sometimes just shooting it against a white background. You can get enough of it, a clean enough stencil, you know, silhouette that way. And then you've got, you know, something you can fill in the dark stuff with, and then paste the whole thing against another background. So, you know, you could do a dance number that would look pretty cool. Seriously. So, so this is the, if you wanted to do this with one of these, this is the Canon XF105. It's one of the HD cameras that Cape Ann Television has. It records onto a CF card. So I need another volunteer. How about you? Just real quick. Just real quick. So what we're going to do. So when you're using a camera outside of the studio, you want to be able to make sure that your white balance is set, that your exposure is good, it's not too bright, not too dark, and that you're not pushing the gain up. In other words, there's a way to be able to boost the signal coming out of the chip so you can shoot in darker areas. You don't want to do that. You want to have it as flat response as possible, and so you set it at 0. If you can set it at like -3, some cameras have a -0 setting, which has even less grain to it. Whatever gets you the cleanest picture. So you probably can't see this right here, but we're going to roll on this. And what's your name again?
Kendra.
Kendra, wave to the camera. Very good. All right. That's enough of that. One of the first things that made Final Cut Pro a cool application was you could do effects as well as edit. You could do fades, you could dissolve, you could do all the stuff that you used to need, you know, an actual switcher for to be able to do transitions and stuff like that. And one of the things that came up that was really cool was the idea of being able to do Chroma Keys. You recognize this person. Okay, so.
Am I done?
You're done.
Okay. See what you're doing.
Good job.
Okay. Do not wear green. Okay. And one of the things that's really cool about Premiere, this is the latest version of Adobe Premiere Pro, and as good as Final Cut was in terms of being able to actually get a Chroma Key, and that you had to mess around with the controls a lot. And so you really spent a lot of time trying to make the green as good as possible and extracting as clean a key as you possibly could. Sometimes you'd have to like cut out the stuff that was on the edges because it would be a different quality green and wouldn't key as well, and it was really tricky. So now you don't have to do that. And I will demonstrate. So, if you haven't used Premiere, there's like a, you get a 1-week free trial. So you can see, does it choke my computer? You know, is it something I can use? Does it have a easy to understand timeline and user interface? And I was really reluctant to switch over from Final Cut to Premiere, but after Apple sort of said, well, you know, we're not going to support this anymore. We're going to have Final Cut 10, which means basically everybody who's learned how to edit on Final Cut Pro for the last 7 versions.
Didn't know what they were doing.
Exactly, you're stuck now, you know. So. All right, so that didn't work. Becky, you remember what we did?
When you go to import, you go to the same folder, except you go into the folder and you just grab the MXF file.
Oh, right. And there we are. All right, so all right. Now, so what you do is you go up to Effects here, to Keying, and they're all different kinds of keys. You can have a Luma key. In other words, if you've got a dark background and a light foreground, you know, or you know, like we were talking about, shoot against a white background, you got a black foreground. You don't light the people that are in front of it, so you just have silhouettes. That's one key. Difference key, color key. What Premiere has that's really cool is a thing called Ultra Key. And so you drag Ultra Key down to the clip you want to affect. And then it's so easy, anyone can do it. Okay, now I'm stuck, Becky. Where do we get the controls for the effect?
You know how we went to the motion and drop down? It's in the same tab.
Oh, it is. So up here? Effects control. There we are. All right, so Ultra Key. You can make mats, you can run things around. We use an aggressive key, and then you see this dropper thing here. This is the key color. Right now it's black, but if you take the dropper and come over to the background, bing, instant chroma key. I mean, there's no tweaking controls, there's no playing around with stuff. It just does it. So, and then, so here's our finished composite picture. So it's what you can do now on your laptop. You used to need to have a TV studio for it. So it's really cool to start thinking about what can I do with a camera, a green screen, and a laptop, and a bunch of photos and movie clips, and really start, you know, telling some interesting stories. You know, combine some live action stuff with some stuff you create in the green screen. You know, try to copy the lighting that you've got in your real life situation in the studio so you can then, you know, create a fantasy or whatever you're trying to do. In some cases, you know, trying to do like a historic, you know, a historic story like Scorsese's Gangs of New York. Most of that was computer generated backgrounds. You know, he built a lot of sets, but ended up using a lot of stuff that was on green screen, just because, who knows why, you know. But it's, you know, it's a way to be able to do it. It's a way to be able to do it much cheaper. You can, you know, you can create mid-19th century London and have people walking around and stuff. And there's a lot of things, you know, besides shooting an interview style thing like this, imagine just building a scene. It could be, you know, a battlefield. It could be people just riding around in horses. A lot of stuff. You know, you shoot one person on a horse, have them change costumes, and you can use that same horse with a different rider on it, and just sort of put them in a scene. So, because you can control the in this, you know, in Premiere, in practically any other, excuse me, nonlinear editing system, you can control the size of things. So if you could actually shoot somebody full length here, you know, head to foot, you could actually, you know, stick them on anything, make them any size, and, you know, just keep duplicating the layers. So again, one of the things that we really want you guys to be able to remember is that this stuff is all available here. And you know, all you need to do is bring your ideas and start playing around with stuff. So any questions about what we've got into so far? Yes?
I'm sort of wondering, so once you have the lighting pretty good,
right.
Are there other pitfalls that are going to make it look, you know?
Well, you can play around with, you know, how sharp is the edge here. You know, what we might want to do with the foreground picture here is make it a little more contrasty, so it matches the blacks and light areas of the background. And again, that's all stuff you can adjust right in the editing system. So,
If lighting, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
All right. When you're talking about the sharpness, I mean, it's obvious that it's a green screen in our quick setup here.
Right.
Because the edges were black, and they were akin to the old, you know, paper, scissors, cutout, compositing of photos and everything.
Right.
How seamless can it get at the scale we're at here?
With this setup here, I mean, it can be very seamless. Because you can adjust how soft or how hard the edge is yeah, you can soften the edge, you can sharpen the edge. You can find like a sort of a sweet spot in between. One of the things that would also help, I mean, what's important here is we've got green on the back on the floor, which is great if you're doing a full body chroma key. But if you're not, every place you've got green close to whoever the subject is, there's a chance for that green to spill into this, exactly. Or, you know, like sometimes under here you can sort of see like when we did the promo for this course, we just sort of ran in here, turned on the lights, and, you know, shot it, you know, without tweaking the lights a lot or looking at how much spill there was. And what you really want to be able, what makes the best green screen is to be able to have the background actually, you know, like at least 8 feet away from whoever the subject is, because that minimizes the amount of spill. And if you don't have green on the floor, then you really won't get that bouncing back in. Any place you've got green, the chroma key wants to take that information out. So you're like, you know, sort of fighting with, you know, you're trying to get clean shadows, but all you're going to get is green, which means the picture's going to go away. So the best thing to do is to have some way to be able to check your shot. When you're shooting green screen, be able to actually, you know, either put it into an edit timeline or have, you know, something real time like we've got here in the studio, so you can really see what you've got. Yeah. So, I mean, this is basically, you know, we saw this is like instant. What takes hours and hours is making sure that the perspective is right. What a lot of times you want to do is throw the background out of focus a little, so that you have, you know, what looks like a sort of a shallower depth of field, so that the foreground's in focus, but the background's just a little off.
I have a color question. Let's say your footage, your background footage is like, say, something you shot at the golden hour, so it's got
right.
Like all these golden colors, and I'm just thinking, looking at that image, is there a way to change your, like, if you would need to shoot your person in front of the green screen with gold, like you'd have to mess up your color? Yeah.
You could.
I'm thinking if you went and shifted per color gold, you'd mess up your background, right?
Because you can do color, well, that's the thing, is if you try to correct that in, you know, after you've pulled the chroma key off, what you need to be able to do is export that layer as something else so you can color correct it. So the best thing to do is to try to match the color or get close to it when you're shooting. So yeah, if you've got like a sunset in the background and you have, like, you know, just sort of an edge light coming this way that kind of matches where the direction of that sunset is, and then you throw in a little bit of fill here that would be, you know, sort of a neutral color, then you'd probably get a, you know, fairly convincing effect. But you do have to be careful about that, because you can't, because it's, you know, because the background has to stay green, you can't do a lot of color correction unless you export this layer, you know, the clip here, as a separate clip with a transparent background. And then you can color correct that, because it's not going to affect the background. The cutout has already happened. So, but that's just an extra step that you have to go through. More time.
I have kind of a technical question.
Sure.
How do they get the green out of the image? Like in the old days, Disney used to have people with razor knives actually cut the people out.
There was that, or you could paint it out on, you know,
yeah, one way or the other.
Blow it up, yeah.
Yeah, but you did it frame by frame by frame. This thing does an entire thing, and I'm like old enough that I'm going, oh my God, you would have had to render that overnight to get that little clip, right? And it did it in like
instantly.
1 minute.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
So what, yeah, I mean, the thing, again, green's got the most amount of color information, and, you know, in terms of what different shades are, but most importantly, it's got less noise, and it really shows, it's got more detail in it, and it has another way to be able to, because if you don't wear green, you'll look fine, you know, and not many people wear green.
Except on St. Patty's Day.
Exactly. I don't know if you got really green eyes or stuff like that. But you can really fine-tune the, like, you know, we showed with the dropper there, you can really fine-tune what green stays and what green goes away. So you can kind of tweak it there. But green, the first Chroma Keyers were not digital, they were analog, and so it was like this big box, like about this size. But it did essentially the same thing. It separated the red, green, and blue color signals coming out of the camera, and then figured out from the green signal what was the background and what was the foreground. Okay. By being able to adjust contrast and luminance, you could sort of separate that out. And then it was mixed back in as a matte to cut out the green background. So through that series of steps, you have then like a subject on a transparent background that you can paste on anything.
Yeah, because I was thinking, you had that idea of those green suits.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if you were in regular clothes and you had a little green pop-up on your tummy, and then you could teach anatomy? You could show the organs, like, and the person's there. No,
yeah.
Just creepy stuff like, I don't know.
As long as you don't move. Because that's because if you move and the organs aren't moving, then.
Cutting you open.
No, but I mean, okay.
Maybe you could simulate that. I like the other idea better. Kind of going with that.
But it sounds like it's a lot of fun. You just have to be creative in what you do.
Yeah, and the thing is like being able to pre-visualize what's the final thing going to look like, and then sort of work backwards from there, how you're going to get all the pieces that will make that happen. And again, by experiment, just playing around with stuff like this, which is why it's great to have a green screen studio just sort of sitting here.
But you say you have to be a certain distance away. So
you should be about you should try to be about 8 feet away from the background and with no green on the floor.
And it just gets blurrier. So like, and you have to have light on that and light on the subject
right.
matter.
And you can't, the other thing to remember about the green background is don't make it too bright. Because if you make it too bright, you're bleaching out the color information. If it's too dark, then it gets noisy. So you have to really, there was a lot of experimenting that went into what kind of lights and how far away and what's the angle and all the other stuff that goes in here. But now that it's here, all you got to do is just throw the switch and you're good to go.
Because I was just thinking for, like I said, still photography. Like let's say you want to change backgrounds without having to pull them down or whatever.
Right.
But if you kind of wanted your person close to the wall or leaning against the wall, maybe that wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work, no.
If it was a brick wall and you just leaned against it, it would be too close.
Right. Yeah.
It'd have to be away from
Especially your shadows. Your shadows would then ripple.
Okay.
And again, you can play around with the settings, so that you can try to kill the shadows, but then you start getting, you get more of a jaggedy edge.
You get to see the green screen. You can see there. We had there's a question that came up about the intensity. Can you see here? It's much brighter here than down in there.
Yeah.
So there's a range in brightness.
Yeah.
That you've got to keep.
Well, there's a range of brightness you have to fight basically, so that your mat is like totally even from side to side.
But it's tolerant, and that's a pretty wide range of brightness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good because if you look at how bright this corner is as opposed to how dark that corner is,
but it still looks good.
But because of Ultra Key, the magic of Ultra Key, you can just sort of hit that thing and it finds a green that's sort of a good mix of all the greens that are in the background there. And there are ways that you can actually set up sections. You can have like a number of different key, if you've really been sloppy about setting up your green screen background or you had no time or something like that, you can go back in and correct it by picking out different parts of the green screen and just setting the key for that individually. But that goes, again, that's a lot of work and, a lot of messing around. So if you work hard to get your actual picture as good as possible, you'll have a lot better success in doing this stuff. You had a question?
I was going to ask you about a portable screen.
Yeah.
You're obviously not going to get it 8 feet back because they're small.
No.
Right?
Right.
Also, you're going to have to bring double lighting, right? You're going to have to do lighting for the subject, and
Right.
you're going to have separate lighting for the green screen.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you probably just bought paint, or is it special paint?
This is special. This is special Chroma Key green paint.
I can speak to the portable screen part. Not that you asked me, but
That's what we're here for.
I use them quite a bit. I mean, in the studio, you have the luxury of an evenly lit wall with a matte paint, which doesn't reflect the light. When you get one of those pop-up screens, you're going to get hot spots on it when you put your light on there because it's a nylonish material like a tent. So you'll see it will glare. So you need to try and get your subject that you're filming away from the glare if you can, in my experience.
Don't you have to do a lot of diffusion?
You can try diffusion, but the thing is, it's still going to give you hot spots and points, which will alter what color you have to key out, because the computer will see the bright spots as a different type of green than the darker green.
You might have a
And so that's what Tim
Right.
was talking about. You might have to go in and clip out the subject and then key the remaining green rather than just dropping it into Premiere like that. You'd have to use After Effects.
Though a lot of those fold-up things now are made almost like, it's kind of like the green screen background you get for a studio. It's just almost this felt, which is this almost, you know, totally non-reflective. Yeah, those are excellent. But the problem, yeah, it's always a compromise. You know, if you've got a small green background, then you need to be able to have some way to be able to control the amount of spill that's going to happen because the background's only a couple of feet back. So, but it's better than, you know, not being able to do it. So
are there like things tell your talent not to wear like?
Don't wear green.
Well, no, but like cocoa butter or something shiny that's gonna reflect.
Well, yeah, anything, yeah, if you've got something that really is going to pick up any of the green coloring back.
Like don't wear a silver
No.
lame outfit.
Disco ball.
Some golds will reflect in the greens a lot. They'll have some weird effects.
Right. So you want to, yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, it depends on what the system is you're using, with the camera sometimes, the lens, that can affect all of that. So what you want to be able to do is kind of try stuff out, you know, experiment, see what this looks like. Does this, you know, and especially if you want to put on a green suit, make sure that it's also the same color green as your backdrop, because if you got one color green in the suit and another color green in the background, you're going to be having a hard time making those two greens, you know, work together or disappear, actually. Any other questions? All right, so what we want to do is, we were trying this after hours get together, and we got a bunch of different people than we usually get, you know, during the lunchtime things. And so while I've got you here, I wanted to find out what would be the next thing you'd want to learn or talk about or get together about. If you were going to have, if you were thinking of because we're always thinking what we want to do next, and what we want to do next is what you guys want, you know, what our audience is looking for. So
Premiere Pro 101.
I'll go for that also.
Okay, but what did you have in mind?
Well, I missed the one that I requested, the audio one.
Right,
Like you said, they were thinking about doing a second part on it.
right. That's a good thought. Yeah. We'll put.
Are the videos easily accessible? I've never tried to come to them.
A few of them are on YouTube. They have their own playlist. So if you go right to KBN TV's YouTube page, their playlist is right under the uploads playlist. So Lunch and Learn series. There's a few of them.
You have your own YouTube channel now?
KPN TV, yes.
Yep, yeah.
For years.
Cool.
It's a secret.
Yeah, because I didn't know, and I didn't show here.
I thought anybody could have a channel.
Anybody can,
Yeah.
but just you got to go do it
Yeah.
and start it up. But there's a ton of stuff on the KPN TV. What's great about the KPN TV YouTube channel is that it's high def. And so you can see what this stuff all, you know, really looks like, as opposed to trying to, you know, watching it in standard def. Yeah, it looks a lot better. And, you know, so some of the shows, I mean, a lot of work goes into the shows that go out of here. And a lot of times you don't get to see that just because it's, you know, on channel 12. So it's, you know, this going to YouTube, I think, is a good way to be able to, you know, really take advantage of some of the stuff that's here. And also have an audience kind of built in.
I thought of another one.
What's that?
Have you ever worked with an Atomos recorder?
Yes.
I was at a shoot, somebody was doing it, and at first I thought it was just a little duplicate screen because it looked that big.
Right.
But then I noticed he can control back and forth from the camera, and if something's a tiny bit out of focus, there's a little red line around it.
Right.
And if it's a little over, and there's supposed to little zebra marks on it, and it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Have you ever used one?
You can get monitors that do that without but the Atomos also has a hard disk recorder built into it. So the output from your camera gets recorded directly onto a hard drive. You just take the hard drive, you know, take the Atomos thing, either transfer it to another drive, or if you're in a real rush, you can edit right off of that, as if it were an external
He said
hard
he could
drive.
back and forth. He said he could also communicate from the Atomos back to the camera also.
Yeah, you can tell it to roll, not roll, you know, stop, pause, and stuff like that.
Are they worthwhile?
They're great if you got a camera that.
You get a special camera?
Well, you need a camera that has a clean out. You know, the HDMI connector on a lot of Canon cameras will give you a picture that's been heavily compressed, so you don't have the full advantage of that. Whereas the Panasonic GH4 is it's a digital SLR, but it has a 4K output that you can plug right into the Atomos and record 4K right into that, as well as the onboard card. So, you know, it's a nice toy. It really is good. We don't have one here, so yeah, I mean, it'd be something fun to talk about. But I like, you know, the idea of doing audio again, and Premiere 101 would be great.
Premiere 201 as well.
Well, we'll start with 101 and see how it goes from there. 201, I mean, you know, the problem with editing is it's one thing to stand up here and sort of show everybody what to do. It's not going to stick unless you do it. I mean, the real way to make this work is for everybody to have like a laptop with Premiere installed on it, and then everybody can kind of follow along. But that gets pricey. So we've been, you know, kind of struggling with the idea of, okay, how deep can we get into editing without, you know, having an edit system available to everybody that shows up? And so that's, you know, again, another thing we're playing with. Is there a way to be able to like teach basic stuff? And the fact that we're putting all these things on YouTube might be helpful, because then it would be a tutorial that you could watch, you know, rewind, I didn't get that part, or something, you know, it might be more useful actually even that way than doing it live. But anybody who's got any good ideas about teaching editing without having an edit system for everybody to practice on, let us know, because we'd love to be able to do it. There is talk of being able to get some more computers here so that we could have more edit stations, so we could actually do, not huge, but some workshops where you could get a few people in a room and actually go through the basics and then get into some, you know, higher level skills later. Any other ideas for what we should be talking about here?
So, instead of stills, you had mentioned that when we were having supper, B-roll? You can
Yeah.
put B-roll in the background?
Yeah, anything that's like, see, what I did for the promo there is, so we got space.
Oh, yeah, I see these flying by.
How cool is that?
So it's, so you can, you know, basically you can, whatever you've got, either a still graphic or a video, use it as a background, because
Are
it's.
you backlit in that, or is that just giving like a teeny edge?
That's giving a teeny edge on this.
It kind of looks like it could be backlit, you know what I mean?
Oh, just a little bit of a fringe on that.
The
Yeah.
black around your black
No,
shirt.
this is a sort of an unprocessed, I would say, you know, effect. Let's try this. So you can either pick the color you want to match, or do the dropper thing. And see, that's a little bit cleaner. There's still a little bit of a fringe there. I just picked a different color green, because, you know, there's like, it's brighter on the top than it is on the bottom, just because the lights are closer to the backdrop than they are on the top than they are on the bottom. So there's like a you know, sort of a graded difference between luminance on the top and on the bottom there.
Continuous.
No, it's not continuous. I mean, one of the ways to be able to perfectly light a green screen is to have a couple of these fluorescent heads set up vertically, so you're, you know, and they're like, you know, even 45-degree angle to the background here. But that would mean taking up floor space. It would also mean that, you know, it would cut the amount of space you've got between the background and the foreground too, which you know, again, is the thing you're trying to get the most of. But by playing around with the adjustments on how sharp the edge is, you know, what you could probably do is build up the contrast again so it's matching the blacks in the background, and, you know, just try to get the exposure range sort of the same as the background. Makes a much more convincing composite. Any other questions from anybody? Yes?
Any chance of an After Effects workshop?
That's even tougher. Yeah, we could get into the, you know, here's what all the controls do. But unless you're sitting there actually doing it, I mean, I've taken courses both ways. One, just sort of sitting there and having somebody talking to you, and after the first 10 minutes, unless you got something to actually apply it to, it's great to know if you're really familiar with the software, and you can kind of picture in your head what it is you have to do. But for more than 20 minutes, you know, you start losing the ability to be able to translate that into actual practice. So again, having your own system is good.
I haven't looked to see the lights that you're using for the green screen.
Yes.
Are they white or are they tinted?
They are, no, they are white. Those are, Becky, these are quartz, right? Or are they LEDs?
But they're not green.
No, they're not green. No. And what some green screen studios are set up, they're actually set up with green lights so that they, you know, it's a pure green that comes off the screen there. But that's really, these days you don't have to do that, just because almost any green will do, you know, as long as it's fairly consistent, as long as it's pretty, you know, from side to side, as long as it's more or less the same color green, it'll work. Anything else?
This was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for coming. So we'll think about doing maybe a Green Screen 102, you know, where we can get into a couple of more, you know, lighting tricks and getting a little bit deeper into this. But I think doing the audio, you know, workshop again would be good, because there are a couple of things that I wanted to cover that I wasn't able to. And then sort of, I think the basics of Premiere, just sort of how do you bring clips into it? How do you use the timeline? How do you sort of find your way around?
Yeah.
Would be helpful, you know. So we'll put that into the mix as well. So, show of hands, how many people would come for another one of these evening things? Okay. All right.
Might not be.
Well, you should have been here for the how to make a movie on your iPhone.
Oh.
Yeah. Exactly. Something even crazier. So what we'll probably do is this time next month we'll have one. We'll have another one of these evening things. I like the idea of being able to do it at night so we can get more people that work off island. And what I would do is, if you think of an idea for one of these get-togethers, one of these workshops, send it to Becky. Her email is right on the KPN TV website. And just, you know, give us your ideas, because we want to do more of these things, get more people to come out and start thinking about the stuff that they want to do for their own video projects. Because the more that people create, the more they get into it. And that's one of the things that I've been able to find, is that the more you can get people excited about the idea of being able to do their own stuff, you know, take a camera out, set up something here in the studio. This is all resources, these are all resources that are available to you folks. So think about how you could best use them. You've got them. Create stuff for free, you know. It's not a bad deal.